let me know when it started, and
All
then
right, you're good to
we'll
go.
just jump right into it.
Let's do it.
And then, well, we can defer the PWSH talk to maybe the last 2 minutes.
Last 5 or 6, but yeah.
Anyways, well, I'm sure we'll talk about it again next community call after the release actually has gone out and people actually play with it. But anyways, um, I assume that you've started it. Then we can get going. Joey, yes, just give me an
Yep.
X. Okay. Um, so I think last time we had a call, and I also tweeted about this. The original plan was that we would target having a release candidate next week, right before PowerShell Conference Asia. And I posted an update already because we were taking a bunch of breaking changes. It didn't make sense to really call the release candidate, particularly not just the renaming of the executable, but there's some other changes coming in as well. If you take a look at the pull requests, this will all show up in a change log. We'll have a breaking change section on the top so you can kind of see exactly. They're not all big breaking changes. The biggest one is the renaming of the executable. And we can go over some of those details in our thinking. I thought we kind of captured it, at least in a summary, in the actual issue. But there's other ones coming in as well. Some of it is based on, community feedback saying, hey, do you guys, this is probably the right way to do things. And with 6.0, we have some opportunity to make some breaking changes. We're not just breaking stuff left and right. We do really take into consideration, like, what's the likelihood somebody's going to be breaking? And if they do break, do they know they're breaking? What's the side effects? And is this something we can live with for like the next 10 years kind of thing? So,
Yeah, and there's also there's one additional criteria which actually we used to reject a breaking change last night, which is that if something is just purely for the sake of internal consistency, where we don't actually see that there's a real world benefit or that people will actually have some improvement as a result in their life as a result of us making the breaking change, then we try not to make it. There's places where the risk is not worth the lack of reward, essentially.
yep. Um, yeah. So the going back to the roadmap. So then the plan now is that we'll have the beta 9 release targeting next Wednesday if all things go well. And then right now we're planning on having a release candidate probably mid-November. And if all things go well from that, then we haven't quite closed on an actual GA date yet. One of the things that we're kind of dependent on and waiting on is really .NET Core. So they have a couple of servicing fixes that we want to pick up. One is for Raspberry Pi, so we can actually have official builds and not like this Franken build that people have to use right now. The other thing is there is a what's the word? I'm not supposed to use the word hang, but there's a threading issue on cross-gen binaries, and they have a fix already for us, but it's not in the officially supported servicing release of .NET Core 2.0. So we're working with them to figure out when we can actually pick that up, and then that will probably be the last major change that we'll pick up before we actually have a GA. So, but we do need to go through some validation, make sure no other changes they picked up have broken anything else. So we're planning on probably after beta 9 picking up one of the pre-release versions of the .NET Core 2.0 servicing branch. So that's another big thing, somewhat big thing. It's not a huge thing that's coming. But we're not moving to 2.1 until after 6.0 anyway. So,
But hopefully we're sort of demonstrating that the things should be slowing down. Like the fact that things are maybe a little bit boring at the moment, like that's a good thing. We're driving towards stability. And then we can talk in a few minutes of kind of about what we're thinking about doing after 6.0. But yeah, go ahead, Steve.
No, I mean, I think that's the meat of it is really, between now and the end of the calendar year, where, my team is solely focused on that. And kind of what Joe was hinting at, like once we get to a stable place, we can start ramping up 6.1 work. We'll more than happy to talk about what our thinking is around that. But there's also we'll talk about me in that when that comes up. There's other work that my team needs to do, not just feature work, in order to make ourselves be move more efficient and move more agile in the future.
Yeah, so no, go ahead.
TV on.
I don't know. Somebody's probably unmuted. Let me try and But in any case, yeah. So we're closing up here. There's really no new exciting feature work happening. There is actually one big fix. I know that Jim's encoding fix is going to make it in, hopefully for beta 9. All right, I'm gonna figure out who that is now. That's I think I know who it is, but it's. Oh man, someone's having a good old time. Hold on, everyone. Oh, nope, I just screwed up. I removed someone on the call from the call. I'm the worst. I'm just muting people. Alright. I think we're good now. Sorry. I know that Jim's encoding fix is going on where we're finally getting the default encoding changed. And slightly changing the way that byte encoding works as well. We're taking that out of the encoding parameter and making it a separate parameter so that the encoding parameter can universally accept system.encoding object. Okay, good question on OpenSSH. We'll definitely get to that. I'm going to close my participants here so I can see the chat again. So I know that encoding fix is going on. We've also have the ongoing one about, I know Marker Krause was not able to join today, but he's very passionate about the export CSV no type information. Basically, we put the type at the top of a CSV that gets exported, and we're going to change the default behavior. I believe we haven't totally closed on it, but we're pretty sure we're going to change the default behavior to not do that. And then
I think we closed on that, and Mark already has the PR open.
Okay, yeah, he's ready to go.
Waiting on that to submit that PR. So
totally, yeah, and I think everybody's pretty passionate about that one.
So no promises there. It would be good to try to get it in because it is a breaking change.
Yeah. And then, is there about any other major feature work coming in right now, Steve?
No, I mean, like anything else is really coming from the community. So if Mark or anyone else submits enhancements, adding capabilities, commandments, we'll review those. Right now, the priority on my team is really focusing on existing PRs or issues that are high priority or PRs that are breaking changes, making sure that we spend time reviewing those and trying to get those in as part of beta 9. That way, for the release candidate, we should only be having quality fixes and not breaking changes.
Exactly. So let's talk a little bit then about our thinking for after 6. So this is all still sort of in flux, but we want to just sort of share what our current thinking is. Right now, we believe that PowerShell 6.0 is going to adopt what's called a modern lifecycle, modern support lifecycle, which basically means that it will be supported sort of similarly to WMF 5.0, where we said, hey, there's a new version that's going to be coming out, a new minor version, and we're going to ask that you adopt that minor version in a pretty, relatively short window compared to the traditional fixed support lifecycle. So, pick this thing up within a year of 6.1 coming out, and then 6.1 will be the supported build going forward, or 6.2 as that comes out. At some point, we understand that people need stability, and as an enterprise, you want to make sure you have an LTSB. So at some point with 6.1 or 6.2 or something like that, we're going to declare some sort of long-term servicing branch and maintain that thing as sort of a supported stable branch while we continue to develop PowerShell forward with new MITRE versions. So I think we're roughly targeting milestones or releases every 6 months. I think we'd probably still put out previews, but the final build of 6.1 or 6.2 would be 6 months or 12 months down the road. But again, this is all sort of, we're figuring this out as we go along. This is the rough plan, but we're open to suggestions on any front. So in terms of what's going in the release, We haven't really landed on anything yet. We've got a whole bucket full of stuff that we would like to do, but we need to figure out of that bucket what is possible and what's the highest priority. And so you may see some shift in the GitHub projects as we try and figure out, okay, what are all the things that we might want to go after, and how are we prioritizing. And for those of you that don't know, this is it's a little out of date. We haven't used it here in a while since we were doing planning, but this is the link to the GitHub projects for the PowerShell repo. So this thing we gotta get back up in shape and plan from there. So, you have anything to add, Steve Haymett?
I think the one thing I'll mention again, yeah. So we're thinking about probably having like a six month cadence going forward. But if you look on the projects today, there's a bunch of stuff there that, especially in the area I call like strategic investments, that I would like to do as long-term things. But it doesn't mean everything in there will be landing completely within a 6 month period. It's just not feasible. But I want to make sure that we start making progress towards certain things to improve our ecosystem. Help differentiate PowerShell, make it useful. One other thing I'll mention that is not explicitly captured in the project yet, that is, again, I kind of alluded to earlier, which is I will need to spend a portion of time with my team, maybe like 2, maybe up to 3 months, just doing some infrastructure work, resolving some of the debt and manual work that we still do today with every release. So, for example, it's kind of sad, but in Windows we got some benefits because the Windows team handled this for us. They have automated runs across different versions of Windows and stuff like that we care about. Today we have Travis CI and we have AppBear, but that only covers very specific distributions. And we really need to cover on a regular basis all the distros we support and all the Windows flavors we support. And right now that's a manual effort. So we would just need to kind of, when the code works kind of slows down, we can actually spend some effort building that up, getting those run on a regular basis so that doesn't continue to be a manual process for my team. There's also other things like, just completing some of the test coverage work, maybe some additional code coverage analysis, some tooling work, stuff like that. So it's just some stuff that we need to do is to make the team itself more efficient, and then we can actually move forward faster in future releases. That's the idea. I think when we get to a more locked plan, definitely everything will be on GitHub, so you can kind of see for yourself and provide feedback. And if anything that you think is really important, not there, definitely let us know.
Yeah, so I think we're just gonna head to questions here. So I'm gonna go up to the top with Eugene's question, whether the release of OpenSSH for Windows is tied to the release of PowerShell 6. Does support for remote management support via SSH depend on OpenSSH being released? So the short answer is no. They're completely decoupled. And the thinking there is that really OpenSSH is a very stable infrastructure component in the non-Windows world. So it's viewed as something that's almost always available. It's something that we can leverage or take advantage of wherever it is available. And so, part of our just sort of overall strategy in being more interoperable with Linux is making sure that that's also as available as possible on Windows. But currently, the feature that we support for PowerShell remoting over SSH, it works great with the OpenSSH that exists on all these other non-Windows platforms. It actually works with the OpenSSH beta that we have out so far for Windows, but we're not necessarily gating the release or stability of one on the other. I'm also sort of roughly the program manager for the OpenSSH work. It's a lot of sort of just port work. So there's not a whole ton of design stuff that's going on there. But we are shipping a beta for OpenSSH in Fall Creators Update. So I'll have a blog out hopefully this week. It's getting what is it, Thursday? I'm going to Singapore next week, so but yeah, no, I need a blog out very soon explaining how you can install that. Right now it's an optional feature. If you go real deep in the settings UI or use the get Windows capability, add Windows capability commandlets, you can install that both server and client. We plan on making that more stable in the next release of Windows as well. So we don't want to commit to saying we'll be production ready by then, but that is a goal of ours. So so yeah, it's they're different things. We're just picking up SSH as a sort of mechanism for doing secure authentication, authorization, transport of objects, etc. So hopefully that answers your question, Eugene. If you've got any more, feel free in the chat. Just making sure there's no other SSH questions. Okay, at some point, can we talk about the globbing problems and if we can get some release option and not glob until we get a proper fix for beta 9?
Hey, before we move on, let me just add one more open SSH discussion. So everything Joey said is correct, and there's some discussion down below about Darwin doing a great job on a Chocolate package. The feature on demand that's inbox is a selected version or snapshot of OpenSSH. So if you want the latest that when I tweet about the latest releases, you either get it from GitHub or maybe a few days later Darwin picks it up. You can get it from Chocolate. So just keep in mind, like the one in feature on demand is not necessarily going to be the latest that's available.
Yeah, it's about 4 releases old, 5 releases old, something like that. But it is available in the box. So, but yes, Darwin's doing a phenomenal job maintaining that Chocolate package. It's still super, super useful. Do you want to address the globbing one, Steve?
Yeah. So I would have loved that issue been resolved for beta 9. It's not going to be. I think maybe the option of having an ability to disable it might be sufficient for the 6.0 release, and then we could revisit this in 6.1. I'm very open to thinking about that.
Yeah, I think that's having an automatic variable there is probably something we got to do. So let's make a note and figure it out. Somebody just...
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, but
sorry, this is...
No, go ahead.
Oh, there's a lot of static.
There's some wind, I think, but I'm not sure that it was you because it kind of sounded...
no wind here, yeah.
Decoupled.
So this is Keith, just a quick point on that. So Bash does have, right, the set-o no glob and having some way to do that in PowerShell before at least 6.0 ships is going to be, in my mind, imperative because we're trying to use these PowerShell core scripts to build cross-platform, both Windows and Linux, and we're invoking all sorts of Linux utilities, and we're just running into showstoppers where we've had to, not use the script anymore and have to go back to manual ways of doing it using Bash because we just can't get the parameters through to the Unix utilities like Conan and stuff that we had been using with the alpha version of PowerShell core.
Right.
So it's kind of been a showstopper for us.
Okay, yeah, no, I think that's really good feedback, and I don't. This is always like just curse of PM is saying that I don't think that shouldn't be that complicated, but it's
When the thing is, Bruce has had a PR out there to do some fixes to this, but it's just been kind of languishing there, so I'm not sure what's going on with that one. But
yeah, I know, I'm aware of that one. So maybe Keith, you can help me out. If you just open an issue specifically around having an ability to disable it,
sure,
that might be an easier thing that we could get in sooner.
That'd be great.
Yeah, thanks, Keith.
Hey guys, this is. Go ahead. Sorry. I just have a question around delivery. So I heard chocolatey, but so moving forward, so traditionally, right up to this point, PowerShell has been released with WMF and it's been delivered through the download center. When it splits out to Windows PowerShell, how are those packages intended to be delivered by Microsoft? Are they? I heard chocolatey. Is that the central method for which people get stable releases? Or
no, it's a good question. Chocolate's as much as we like. I personally use chocolatey and I like chocolatey. Unfortunately, it's not a supported mechanism for installing from technically speaking. So we will have to put it in an official place, probably the download center, to be honest, in addition to where we make it available on GitHub with the signatures and all that sort of thing. But yeah, we need it in a trusted location that's a Microsoft domain and that sort of thing. I think we're also trying to investigate Microsoft Update, which is the mechanism for updating MSIs from within Windows Update. So we haven't landed on that yet, but we'd like to make it easier to update to service builds. But in the meantime, it's going to be release announcements on the blog, updates, new official packages for RTMs, kind of stuff on the download center, and then GitHub for everything, including beta and production ready stuff. But if you guys have additional requirements there, we definitely want to hear them, because this is one of those things that can be just a complete blocker to people adopting if the delivery isn't correct.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, for our enterprise, I mean, we have a separate software delivery mechanism. So being able to get the bits and then sort of run them through our QA and get them packaged that way is ideal. We are trying to move towards a strategic sort of artifactory method, but that's a little bit off. And I wasn't really clear on what the strategy was for delivery around Microsoft PowerShell moving forward. So or Windows PowerShell. So it's good to know that you guys are working that out. So appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. It's one of those things where you try to make it as available as possible. Like just put it everywhere. Like everybody's got different places that they prefer that are better for them, and so that's what we're trying to do. But it's a journey for sure.
Hey, this is Darwin. I just have 5 minutes before I have to drop to another meeting. I just wanted to throw something in. I've been struggling with the whole thing of mapping OpenSSH to the latest PowerShell core.
Uh-huh.
The arguments seem pretty esoteric to me, the ones that are being thrown around. However, I decided, well, what I'll do is I'll take in that package a file spec to search for whatever you want. So you can search for get PowerShell core if it exists, but then if it doesn't, go check PowerShell for Windows or CMD or any other command line processor. So using get command against PowerShell core, no version resource. So now it becomes the worst case compared to like all kinds of third-party junk on there that I might also want to configure as my default shell.
Got it.
So I know we had this same issue in OpenSSH. I'd requested it start being versioned, but
yeah,
personally, I think it's high time.
Yeah, no, for sure. Do we have an issue open on that right now, or do we just?
Yeah, it's 5 seconds ago.
Okay. Perfect. No, I think that's a good feedback, Darwin. Thank you, and we definitely want to make your life easier.
Hello.
Cool.
One short interrupt from my side to the update process you mentioned before. We're running some exchanges here, and I just wanted to know if there are any plans to fix compatibility to exchanges. Because currently there's a map out there, you cannot update PowerShell because that pushes Exchange out of unsupported state. So just wanted to know what's the...
Yeah, so right now, PowerShell Core 6 is not compatible with Exchange. They have not done any kind of port work or anything like that yet to .NET Standard 2.0, and they have some very specific requirements in the .NET space, probably more so than most modules. However, PowerShell Core 6 is totally side by side with Windows PowerShell. So we've solved the problem, with PowerShell or with WMF, where essentially if you'd install WMF to a machine, Exchange would no longer support you because they would only support the version of PowerShell that shipped with an operating system. With PowerShell Core, you can install it and continue to use Windows PowerShell with Exchange, and then use PowerShell Core for other stuff. So we're going to work with the Exchange team over time and all the teams that own various modules across the company to help them get their stuff ported over to Net Standard 2.0 and subsequently PowerShell Core 6. But that does take time, and in the meantime, we do support this side by side. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, thanks.
So someone said maybe put it on the PowerShell gallery. We've tried to sort of not make a habit out of putting applications in the gallery. It's, in general, we don't think that, it should be a place where, MSIs get shipped and wrapped, and it theoretically could get turned into a chocolatey alike very fast. So we're trying not to set that precedent. But we may, I don't know. I think we're probably not going to do that. Steve, do you have any other comments there?
I guess the only thing I'll say is that we've had many internal discussions about that specific topic, and there are different people on different sides. And let's just say that the way it's currently closed is that we're not shipping on the gallery. At least no plan for right now.
But also +1 for Artifactory. Yeah, it is awesome. Also a chocolate.
On that note, is there any intention of Microsoft providing a private version of the gallery? I know you guys had something on GitHub that I've installed, but it's in a very rough beta format, and comments on that seem to be that there's no intention on sort of making that. I mean, out of curiosity, just trying to see if there's any strategy.
Yeah, unfortunately, that PS Private Gallery repository was sort of a hackathon project or like a little experiment by somebody, and really hasn't been maintained. With the gallery code base. So those are sort of diverged and out of sync. But we've been bouncing around some thoughts. We really don't. There's nothing like firm or hard to talk about or commit to. But we recognize that people have this need for something that's a little lighter weight than Artifactory, that might be provided by Microsoft, and it's like I said, it's purely a conversation at this point. But we hear people asking for it for sure.
Let me just address.
If you want to,
go ahead.
Just real quickly on that note, before we close out, if I wanted to integrate Artifactory to pull from a public repo PowerShell gallery, what type of repo would that be represented as on the Artifactory side? Is that NuGet?
Yes. Yeah, it's a NuGet v2. Okay. And they may have, Michael even may be alluding to this, they may have like a PowerShell sub option or something underneath NuGet. I saw that Michael's hopping off, so I do just want to say, address the plans and intent behind Polaris.
I was going to talk to that.
Yeah, do you want to?
Yeah, let me talk to that, because I kind of tweeted about it.
Okay.
So I want to make sure everyone understands, like, the way this came about. So Tyler is one of the engineers on the PowerShell Gallery and Tool team, and he came to me and he said he got this cool thing. He showed it to me, and I did. One of the person I did bring up is there's this thing called Flancy that is very similar, and he thought that it was different enough in terms of Polaris depends on PowerShell core versus as far as I know today, Flancy still depends on Windows PowerShell. So that's how that whole thing came out. It was not intended to be like this big release thing. It's just something that he did. And he was kind of excited about it, and I didn't see any reason why not to just share it. And if the community says, "Hey, guess what? This is the wrong direction," then just provide that feedback, and we can take that and we can spend our time, or he can spend his time doing something else.
I mean, I think, and this sort of dovetails with the PS Private Gallery stuff too. Like we have people who are very passionate about PowerShell on the team. We like to release bits. I understand that in the past, people like Jason Shirk have released their projects under their personal name, but we're trying to encourage a culture of more experimentation and more just sort of prototypes and that sort of thing. And so in general, you just may see more of these sort of this is an experiment, we're playing here, and not necessarily have a firm business plan in mind, or a strong development roadmap or whatever. Like sometimes these things are just it's code that we write and like to release. So just really I think the important part is that everybody just make sure to talk about the code and the potential places that the way that the code could be used, and making sure that all that criticism is constructive when given. But yeah, and GitHub it would be nice to have nested groups, because or a PowerShell experiments repo, something like that. We've actually, David Wilson and I have talked for a very long time, and unfortunately never gotten off the ground of doing like an organization, a GitHub organization that we could co-own with the community. So something, I know that there's a couple of these out there right now, like the I'm totally blanking right now, and I'm gonna butcher it, but I know PowerShell.org has one, and I'm blanking on the one that Joel Bennett has. But yeah, something that we could, like a PowerShell garage, Keith, like something that we could all just sort of do experiments in without any intention of ever supporting anything. So that's something we're still kind of bouncing around. Like I said, it's not enough hours in the day, but yeah. I think we got to all the questions that I saw in the chat.
Yeah, I think so.
Can I ask one more without having to type it out?
Go ahead.
Steve, so the shebang stuff works nicely on Linux, but I'm curious, and maybe I just missed something. How is it that we can force a script that's specifically written to work for PowerShell core to run on Windows? And the context I'm thinking of is we use Jenkins, and it has a Windows PowerShell build step in it. And I'm not exactly sure what they're doing behind the scenes, if they're just running PowerShell to exe, if they're using a specific path. But is there any like pound requires magic to say that, hey, this script really requires core, and find the latest version on this machine?
The second part is something we don't have.
Okay.
You can certainly, I think even today you can do pound requires version 6, and then it'll just say it can't run it, which doesn't help you.
Right.
We've talked about the whole PS2 thing, and we're still not moving towards that. Let me, can you just open an issue on that, and it'd be something that I can't commit to fixing, but it's something that I think is worth investigating.
And we need to address the scenario, or at least have some kind of story or workaround that exists for the time being. So, thank you, Keith.
Yep.
Hey guys, this is Ashley.
Hello.
Hey Ashley, what's going on?
Hey,
Good to hear from you.
I missed the first few minutes of the call. What's the current release timeline looking like?
Yeah, we covered that in the first part of the call. But anyways, so we're going to have a beta 9 next Wednesday approximately, if all things go well. Then we're planning on having a release candidate probably mid-November-ish timeframe. We don't have a set date yet for GA. I would like to have it sometime in early December, but our main dependency on that, and the reason we don't have a date, is there's a dependency on some servicing fixes coming out of .NET Core. And so we're working with them to figure out when they can actually get it to us, when they'll have a supported release, when we can pick up a release so we can start validating that nothing broke. And going into the holiday season is always risky for both the engineering team and also for customers. So it might happen that we won't actually have the GA until January or early next year. So
it seems like we hit this every year, don't we?
No, I know. That's something that Joey has brought up to me, which is we did this with WMF, and we're trying not to repeat that mistake. So we'll see what happens.
All right, appreciate it, guys.
So I think maybe we have a quick PWSH conversation.
If it's necessary.
I think I don't see any more questions in the chat.
PowerShell.
Yes, it's pronounced PowerShell. Exactly.
Well, I guess formally PWSH would be pronounced PowerShell Core 6.
So look, some of you saw my conversation on Twitter. I think I had a pretty lengthy Reddit comment on the thread that Margaret Krause spun up. And we had the justification in the issue as well. The reality is things like this will never reach consensus, unfortunately. If you go back up the thread, there were enough people when I said, okay, we're doing PWSH, I'm sticking line in the sand, and it's like, okay, great, yeah, sure. and then there's a wave of people that come and say, no, that's the worst thing I've ever heard, and you're terrible and evil, and then people say, no, it's really not that bad. But the general thinking was, look, we need a way to deterministically invoke PowerShell core on Windows. So today, even if we had put the PowerShell program files folder in the path, you're still not going to be able to invoke the PowerShell.exe without moving System32 out of your path or giving it less precedence in your path. So that was one thing that we wanted to solve. The other thing was just that, shells on Linux are generally shorter, and we've had some Linux folks, that are trying PowerShell for the first time complain that PowerShell is just a lot to type. I acknowledge that having W and S on the same finger, one right after the other, isn't the most optimal in the world, but I think it's probably better than adding another letter or two or three. We also didn't go with PSH or POSH because they are, quote, taken. I know some people took issue with me saying that PSH was taken, given that it's not in a major package repository like Posh is. But we're really trying to be careful here not to step on any toes. Even if these are smaller projects, we're trying to be respectful and not clobber over stuff if we don't have to. So PWSH doesn't exist anywhere in the wild at all. It is totally unique. It's totally us, and we're I think we're committing pretty hard to doing this, given that we don't want to change it again and sort of surprise everyone. We obviously would have liked to do it a little sooner, so that the last beta before the RC wasn't the one where we're making everyone change their shell scripts to point to PWSH. But I think doing it before the 6.0 release is critical. So. I appreciate everyone's patience on the matter, and if if you guys have more feedback, we're always open to feedback. But I think this is one of those things where we're just sort of saying, it is what it is, and we needed to change it to something, and I don't think we're ever going to reach a point where everyone's happy with whatever we change it to. So, but. We're more than welcome to take a beating for a couple minutes if it makes some people feel better. And yeah, I know, Michael, I +1 for not flexing on the little folks. We appreciate that, because I know, some people push back a little bit on Reddit. Why wouldn't you do it? You're Microsoft, right? Like, what's you always
That's the old Microsoft.
Yeah, so we're people. You guys come and talk to us, and you realize that we're just individuals, and that would have really ticked me off if I had been outside Microsoft and as a Linux open source guy. Like, it's just not cool. So we're trying to change the culture there, and I think that's the general consensus across Microsoft now. But yeah, no, there's absolutely time, Josh. Go for it if you even want to hop on the voice here. Oh, an npm-ish package.json. Yeah. In general, like I actually think the thing that we need more than anything, because you can support the packages.json scenario with like required modules. Like, that's what the required modules done in the module manifest. I'm sorry, Keith. I'm going to mute you here because you're a little windy. So there's PS Depends, which is out there. That's like the super full complete solution, and maybe we just need to pick up PS Depends, and just sort of bless it. I haven't looked at it in a really long time. So there's also, like I said, required modules in the module manifest, which is going to pick up install time, but only for PowerShell modules. I think we recognize that there's a need for something to go and pick up NuGet DLLs. The pattern that I see all over GitHub is people checking in DLLs from NuGet.org that they depend on for their modules, which is a terrible, terrible practice. It's not to say there's anything better today, but it's I want to fix that problem. So
Could I
go ahead.
Could I expand on that just a little bit?
Absolutely.
So I think a lot of us are finding that we are deploying ARM templates
compiled code from our companies, or a lot of us may have more than one client that we're supporting, and so our responsibilities are very polynumerous. That's a I think that's overkill. Polynumerous, and so being able to PS depends is great. However, you always wonder if PowerShell, if Microsoft is going to come out with some kind of package provider or other provider that is built in that can do that package.json work, where we can assemble multiple types of projects, stitch them together, and then have a specific key value that this is your build script. And I think that's kind of what I'm wondering, is because we are all taking on so many responsibilities, we need a way to stitch them all together.
Yeah, I think that's really good feedback, and unfortunately I don't have quite as much context on the sort of like build deployment pipeline that traditionally gets used around ARM templates and these sorts of other things. But I would love like if you could open a GitHub issue that we could tag as a discussion, and just sort of talk in general about the sorts of things that people need at build time. I think Keith would be very interested in this as well, with all the plaster stuff. Really, I think there's a large set of those sorts of things. I like polynumerous, by the way. There's a polynumerous set of those sorts of things that we don't totally have in our views. So and sort of understanding where PS depends falls short in practice would be useful as well, because we try not to like rework things, right? Like if PS depends is great and everybody agrees that it's like the way to go, and we can bless that and say that it's the way forward and contribute some fixes there or whatever, then I would love to do that. But if there's some fundamental architectural flaw, I want to understand that so that we don't jump on something that people can't adopt. So yeah, a discussion issue on this would be awesome.
Cool, thank you.
Awesome. Cool. Does anyone have anything else for us? We're 10:15.
Hello.
Yep, go ahead.
I have a question. I already posted a RFC on the GitHub. The pull request is still pending, but I just want to mention it here. So I recently noticed a limitation of the PowerShell remoting. It's limited to WinRM. Yes, there are SSH modules, but it breaks when you have a module that needs a sim session or something like that. I would appreciate if there would be some generic way to add additional communication paths so that you can remote to another machine using another protocol, so you can implement that step without breaking existing modules. For example, if VMs through the hypervisor or something like that.
Totally. I actually saw this RFC, and I really apologize, and just sort of a general apology that we have not been as great about following up on the RFCs as we should be. We sort of need to re-understand our development pipeline and how the RFC process sort of fits in from a timeline perspective with the model of releasing every 6 months, and because the intent was always to sort of decouple the design work from the actual implementation, but we're realizing that in practice that's not always the case. So just in general, like, sorry that you have that abandoned pull request right now, and we're definitely going to be reviewing a bunch of those over the next couple months after we get 6.0 out. I do remember seeing that we support OpenSSH or SSH in addition to WinRM now, but you're right in that we don't support it in a way that it's totally swappable with WinRM, right? So all of those sorts of implicit remoting concepts, or the stuff that allows you to you had a scenario there that I'm blanking on already. But yeah, you basically want an extendable, hey, plug in protocol here, implement interface, and give me a new way to authenticate authorize. So I think that would be really cool. We just have to find the time to really review and give good feedback on the RFC. So yeah, but thank you for contributing it, and we'll definitely try and look at it soon here.
Okay, thanks.
No worries. Thank you.
And another thing, if nobody else has a point, I also noticed that there are not really any modules for managing GPOs. So there are commands for adding, for importing or exporting, but not for setting specific options or doing advanced stuff with GPOs through PowerShell. If you want to add an item to a GPO, you have to know the registry key, and you can set that one within the key GPO, but it's more hassle than usable.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's one of those we've had a hole for a long time, and I don't know that anyone's really investing in group policy right now. Like, it's still in pretty widespread use, but I don't know that we have place it very high in our prioritization at the moment, because it is kind of a hard problem, and I think it's one that people have sort of already worked around or solved as much as they need it right now. But certainly, if someone in the community were to contribute that sort of thing, I think it would be beneficial for a lot of folks. But or if we heard enough of a groundswell of people that absolutely needed a GPO module, but I think it's just something that we're not really looking at to invest in right now. But do you have any other comments there, Steve? Hey,
Sorry, hold on. I'm responding to a bug report here.
Steve's got a release to ship, guys. We don't.
No, I'm talking about in the chat window. I do have a release to ship as well, but sorry, what was the context of the question?
Basically just that we have, why don't we do a GPO module for managing GPOs? And I just basically said that I don't think that, given the lack of investment in GP, that we're really looking at investing at anything there, but that we would definitely.
I think there's 2 points. One is, our configuration story is not around group policy these days, but I think more critical for me is really like GPO, and this goes to some of the other feedback that we've been getting. They're owned by other teams, right? So we can definitely provide them that feedback, but I think it's more impactful if they get the feedback from customers and not from a partner team that maybe has their own agenda. So like AD team, we've been telling them, hey, we're getting a lot of customer feedback that, you guys are not PowerShell Core 6 compatible. You're kind of being used a lot. Can you guys do something? And I know that recently I saw some emails internally that, someone went through customer support, and actually it might start, hopefully get the ball rolling there. Doesn't mean that will show up anytime soon, because it's not a small amount of work that they have to do, but at least hopefully that work gets started, so it'll show up sometime in Windows. And those kind of things are the right way to, I think, move Windows partner teams that own modules and get them on board on the PowerShell Core 6 train. Hopefully that helps a bit.
Do you know about any stuff, Steve, with Gia here? I'm looking at.
Yeah. So the specific issue was a regression. Paul on my team had already made the fix in the Windows code base. So that goes back to, we are making fixes where necessary in Windows PowerShell 5.1. We're not revving the version. We've had that discussion internally. Anyways, it's going to be 5.1 indefinitely for now. The build number will tell you whether it's a new build. But that was fixed last July. So I would think that, Michael, if you have a recent install Win 10, that should be working for you. And if not, let me know. But I don't think, if you're presenting tonight, then I don't know if I can get you anything tonight. But that should already be in the latest Windows builds, but it won't show up in WMF. Yeah, just Michael, just send me a message either on Twitter or however you want to try to reach me. You can probably figure out well, you can send me an email anyways, slee@microsoft.com. As long as it gets past the spam filters, I'll see it.
Okay, well, I think that just about covers it for today. So, unless anybody has any last-minute questions, I think this was a really, really good community call. I really appreciate everybody hopping on today.
Real quick one before you go. Was there any update on the pre-release support for modules?
Oh, yeah, it's happening, but not as quickly as we like.
Okay.
I don't have a status update to share necessarily there, but I know that work is going on. It just turns out to be a little trickier, I think, than anyone expects, as always happens, right?
Gotcha. Thanks.
No worries. Thank you. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your day. Great weekend, and we will hopefully see you next time. For those of you attending PowerShell Conference Asia, we're looking forward to seeing you there. Steve and I will both be there, in addition to some more folks from our team. So, but yeah, we'll see you next time with a release. Although, let's see, what do we do? Third Thursday? Yeah, so that won't collide with Thanksgiving. So we'll still have one next month. I mean.
Yep.
Okay, thanks everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you.